Hello guys, here's a new one for texture painting with Blender 2.8, a few tricks to produce an icy effect. I start with the default cube. As you know, I like the default cube. I go to edit mode and then I press the S key and then Z to constrain it to the Z axis. Okay, looks good, and then S again to scale it up. I like to add a bevel for this to create rounded edges, so I press Ctrl and B and move the mouse slightly and then the mouse wheel to add one more segment. Okay, and then I unwrap this the easy way. I select all by pressing the A key, then U, and select Smart UV Unwrap. With this we won't create an optimized UV layout, but for texture painting onto the mesh where we don't rely on really good UV islands, it's alright. Okay, I'm going to save this now and then I switch to the texture paint workspace. In this we get two windows that we can use for painting. In the first one you can paint onto the UV islands, and in the second one you can paint onto the mesh. And this is the one that we are going to use. First of all, I switch here to the context, the active tool and the workspace settings, and here I'm going to add a texture slot for the base color. This one, and then I double the resolution, the width and the height. And the name I set to Ice Base. Okay, the base color I set to black and I check 32-bit float. I'm not sure about the implementation, but I get better results with this, especially when we turn it later on into a bump map. Now switch to the look dev mode, and this is the result of the current base color in combination with the default material. I can already paint onto the mesh, but I undo this now, and I switch to the shader editor so that you can see the node setup for the material. Okay, this is the principled BSDF, which is the default shader, and the image for the base color is already plugged into the base color input because we added the texture slot for the base color. For the mesh I will add a smooth shading so that we get rid of these kind of boxy edges. Okay, this looks more round and crisp. And the next thing that I will do is to add a texture for painting. I want to use a texture as stencil, so I open here the texture panel, set this to stencil, that's important, and then add a new texture. And only God and the makers of Blender know why you can't open an image here and you have to switch to the texture tab to open a file, but if you know it, okay, so let's do it. Select this icon to load an image to the texture, press open, and I choose this file. That is a grassy rock texture that I downloaded from textures.com. I searched for grass, rock, and I found a couple of matching images, and I selected this one. You need an account to download this in a low resolution, but it's for free then. At least you have some free credits each day. Alright, now we have this image and we can use it, and once you selected it, you see it appears in the 3D view as a stencil. And you can move around the stencil when you press the right mouse button and move the mouse, and when you press the left mouse button you can paint the stencil onto your mesh. I will use this technique now to paint parts of the image, the rocks and grass, to the borders of the mesh. I speed this up a bit because it's all the same. The technique is to turn around your model and to paint onto the mesh where you need it. And you can also remove parts that you painted in when you hold the Ctrl key pressed and then press the left mouse button to remove the image data at this area. Okay, that's it for the stencil. I remove it now. To do this, go to Texture and press the X button. And this doesn't look too nice, so I will enhance it by adding a bump effect. This can be done by using a bump node that I will add in the shader editor for the material, and with this I will add height information. So I press Shift and A in the shader editor and search for bump, then select the bump node and connect the color of the base image to the height input of the bump node, and then the normal output to the normal input of the principled shader. And you can already see we have some height information displayed on the mesh, and it feels a bit too much, so I reduce the strength. Perhaps even a bit more. And this is a good start in my opinion. And when you play around now with the specular and the roughness, you can see that this has a great effect on the material, but I want to control this effect, okay, especially for the roughness. So go ahead and add a color ramp, which turns this base color into a black and white image that I can use to control the roughness. I connect this color ramp to the slots color and roughness, and then I can use the sliders of the color ramp node to control the amount of black and white values in the image. Okay, now it's time to paint in some icy parts, and the color of ice is white, so I go ahead with a white color and the brush and just draw onto the mesh. It doesn't seem to look pretty natural and good, but when we turn to a black brush now and slightly remove some parts with this dark value, then it looks like melting ice, which is, in my opinion, a pretty nice effect. So I guess there is no book where you can read how to do this. I also just played around with nodes, materials, textures, and finally found out that this is a nice material effect that I can share with you. So my advice is play around with these features, combine textures, nodes, and you will stumble upon great possibilities. Okay, that's it. To make it a bit more pop in the viewport, you can enable the scene lights and also increase the visibility of the background. So guys, I hope you liked this short texture painting tips and tricks. If you do, then don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. You can support me by being my patron. This would really help me creating more tutorials like this. And if you have any questions, then just add these to the comments below. Thanks for watching guys, and I see you on Jayanam.